Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to my YouTube channel here. I had anticipated to have a video up tonight, or when you're watching it, probably in the morning, talking about what the playoff picture in the NFL looks like heading into the final week of the season. And if you're watching this, obviously you're familiar with the events of Monday Night Football last night, where Bills safety Damar Hamlin was made a tackle on a Cincinnati wide receiver. I believe it was Higgins, and immediately after getting up from making the tackle, he collapsed. And it wasn't like a normal injury. You know, we see injuries occur in every NFL football game, and many times when they occur, the player pops back up. Sometimes they have to be helped off. Occasionally they're carted off, and usually that's what you see things like, blown Achilles tendons, blown ACLs, things like that, where they can't walk and once in a while, once in a blue moon almost, an ambulance comes on the field, and which is, when I say once in a blue moon, it's actually very rare. I've only seen it happen 3 times personally, when watching a game. The first time when I was about 12, 13 years old. I think it was 13. It was 1992. Yeah, it would have been 13. It was 1992 when the Chiefs, the team I root for, they were playing the New York Jets, and Dennis Byrd, who passed away about 6 years ago, 6 years ago, in a car accident. But Dennis Byrd was he was trying to sack Chiefs quarterback Dave Craig, and collided with another one of his players, and broke his neck, severed his spinal cord. Now, I do believe he recovered to gain some ability to walk. I'm not sure if he walked again, but I do know that it was a long recovery. I know he never played football after that again. But I do know that was a scary thing. I remember watching it as a young teenager. And when this happened, that was kind of the play I went back to initially, was thinking about that. And I'm 43 years old now, so that was 30 years ago for me. Sorry. I ate some popcorn, so I've got some popcorn kernels stuck in my teeth here. As I sat there and watched tonight, though, it was a different feeling. You could tell that it was serious by the looks on the faces of the players. They weren't doing a lot on the television broadcast of showing what was going on. They showed the play a few times and they stopped showing it. And you could tell by the way they had a shot of Josh Allen at one point, and he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He looked completely horrified. And at that point, I said to myself, I was like, this is different. This is more serious. And there's a couple things that have happened in response to this, though, that I want to talk about, and I want to throw out there as a caution to people, and as events like this occur. So I'm going to switch over here. So this is the ESPN story about Damar Hamlin collapsing on the field, and I want to read a couple of this series. They say, in a chilling scene that grounded to a halt the showdown between two of the NFL's best teams. It says CPR was administered to Hamlin on the field for multiple minutes after he collapsed in the first quarter. So let's talk about this for a second. So there was a lot of things that were being misconstrued on social media during the game, or during the incident. And sometimes they were being misreported. So when somebody's administered CPR, that's not because they've stopped breathing. Breathing has nothing to do with CPR. When someone is administered CPR, that means their heart is stopped. It's a cardiac issue. They're administering CPR to keep someone's heart pumping until medical personnel can arrive. Now, we don't know the extent of what happened. Officially. We can speculate, which I think is somewhat reckless. What we do know is that when he made the tackle, the Cincinnati wide receiver came in, and you could see there was impact right here, right in the chest, in the sternum area. If you do hit just right, you can cause a cardiac arrest. Your heart can get out of rhythm. I don't know the exact term for it. I read about it on multiple people's. There was a doctor, a former NFL team doctor, who was being interviewed from a local Cincinnati or local Buffalo news station or something like that. I was watching it on YouTube, and this doctor, what he was explaining it was that sometimes when you receive a blunt trauma directly to the chest, that it can cause the heart to get out of balance, and sometimes it can cause it basically to stop beating, and until you can get some. I mean, it's definitely something you could definitely die from if you don't receive medical attention immediately. I'm a big believer in the Occam's razor theory, the Occam's razor approach to most things that happen. Whereas the simplest explanation tends to be the right answer, in the absence of anything else that's occurring. What does it say? All things being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. So, in this situation, we see him make a tackle. There is significant blunt force trauma to his chest, and then he drops over and passes out, and they have to administer CPR, and there was the AED was needed as well on the field. To me, that's a cardiac issue. Simplest explanation tends to be the right answer. In this case, it was probably due to the blunt force trauma to his chest. Now, if in 3 days from now, when he's recovering and someone says that he has an undiagnosed heart condition, well, I mean, yeah, that would lead to it. But I still will go back to that. The blunt force trauma probably still played an issue into that, to maybe an undiagnosed heart issue. So again, we don't know. We don't know what the reasons could be. All we know is that the event happened, and now we need to move on. So let's see. Let me scroll down a little bit further in this article here. One of the things you saw down on the field was the Buffalo and the team that they gathered in a circle and prayed for him. I know Stephon Diggs went to the hospital. I think he's like, I don't know what if he said this, but he probably in his mind he's like, I'm gonna get in this hospital. I'm gonna see my buddy, and I know that they initially stopped him from going in, and he's like, well, I want to see I'm here to see my buddy and my player, and then they let him in. So which was cool. Let's see here. Trying to see if there was. It says the NFL announcement to a full postponement came just after 10 p.m. Eastern, some 90 minutes following the kickoff. The league did not say that the game would be made up or resumed. I'm going to talk about this in a second. So, the timeline of events, just so everyone is understanding, and I don't know if it's listed in here, but I remember what it was. So at 8:55 Eastern or 7:55 Central, which is where I'm at. Yeah, it was at 8:55 Eastern. That's when the play occurred, or the play ended. And it says here that at 9:25 he left the stadium at 9:25 in the ambulance. So 30 minutes later he left. It was at 9:20. No, at 9:18, I'm sorry. At 9:18, so it was 20, 24, 25 minutes later. At 9:18, so 18 plus, what's 18? 23. 23 minutes later. So 23 minutes after the play was over, the NFL suspended the game. And then an hour after that, and that was at 9:18. And then a little after 10 o'clock Eastern time, the game was officially postponed. Now, never we would never let a tragedy go, unresolved from in terms of, hey, we gotta use this to further some political agenda or further some conspiracy theory or whatever. The amount of vitriol and the amount of nonsense being spewed out by morons on the internet, especially on Twitter, it was a fever pitch. Most everybody is blaming the NFL, saying they didn't react soon enough, saying they're careless, saying they're heartless, they don't care about the players, they only care about the money. Now, let me be the first to say, maybe not the first to say, obviously, but those who know me, they know my stance on the NFL. And I walked away from being from a fan of the NFL in 2014 because of the issues surrounding Ray Rice. Now, let me put this into some context here, so you don't think, oh, you'd support, the women or spousal abuse. No, that's not at all what I'm saying. Let me explain the situation. What Ray Rice did was reprehensible to his girlfriend/wife. I don't know if it was his girlfriend at the time or his wife. It's irrelevant. Don't say it to his wife because I think they are married still. Ray Rice was not suspended and he was not kicked out of the league because he beat up his wife. He was suspended and kicked out of the league because we found out about it. They tried to cover it up. And I was extremely upset about that. Not because of Ray Rice. I could care less about Ray Rice than the Baltimore Ravens. I was mad that the NFL did this to its fans, did this to the public in general. That, hey, it wasn't good enough for you to suspend him, do the right thing when you knew about it, but it wasn't until, 300 million people found out about it, and now suddenly you're going to do the right thing? I mean, come on. And I know that wasn't obviously the first time something like that had happened, but it was the first kind of the big publicized thing, and I was very upset about it. So I want to put that out there just for context to say the NFL is not some sacred, they're not some sacred cow to me. They are an organization. They're a company that does care about money, and especially with the way that, with the whole concussion issue that's come to light over the past 10, 15 years, and the after effects of playing football on these men, on their longevity of their own lives, and some of the brain issues that are occurring after that has sometimes have led to suicidal issues. You look at guys like Steve McNair, look at Javon Belcher, for example, just a couple of examples, and it's a serious, serious issue. And so no, the NFL doesn't get a free pass. But that doesn't mean that when any type of incident happens, that suddenly we have to still crucify the NFL here. And, one of the guys that I follow on the Red Golden Bold podcast here on YouTube, it's Ren Petro, Eric Eager, and Jeff Jadeo that they operate. So Eric Eager, I follow him very closely on social media. And I like a lot of things that Eric says, and we like to, he does the podcast with Seren, and, we always have, good-natured ribbing back and forth and everything. We always talk about how he needs to comb his hair, on the podcast. And so he sent he was very vocal tonight about how the NFL needs to postpone the game. And there was many other people that were saying the same thing. Well, so let's talk about what has to go into this effect. So the play occurred at 8:55, or was over at 8:55, and at 9:25, so he left the stadium. So in those 30 minutes, can you imagine being on the sideline, whether you're a representative from the NFL, you're a representative from the Players Association, you're a representative of one of the teams, you're a player of one of the teams, you're a coach of one of the teams, you're one of the officials in the game, you're somebody who has some official capacity of dealing with this football game, and in these 30 minutes, I can only imagine the amount of the height of emotions, and the level of I'm trying to think of the right word here, but just, you are emotionally raw at this point. And how can you tell the difference between what's fact and what's not? and words and news is changing, every 30 seconds about what's happening and the nature of the situation. And this is a situation that, quite frankly, is rather unprecedented in the NFL, especially the suspension of a game 23 minutes after a play occurs. And so where the NFL is getting ripped, in my opinion, wrongfully ripped, is for a couple things. First, they're saying it took too long to officially postpone the game. Well, the game was suspended 23 minutes after the play ended. And look, you're not going to suspend the game 5 minutes after the injury occurs. You don't even know what's going on at that point. Or maybe some people do, but you're trying to make the decision. Seconds and minutes are ticking off. Your first concern is for the player's safety, is to make sure he doesn't die on the field because it's a cardiac issue. And do you think that within those first 10 minutes that any NFL official is trying to consider, hey, maybe we should postpone the game? Maybe we should suspend the game? No, you know what? They're trying to make sure that this guy doesn't die. Okay? That's the number one concern. And by the time they got him in medical personnel's, care, then you can start talking about what's next. In my opinion, Joe Buck, who was the announcer, did something incredibly reckless. Now, he probably was told to say it, so it's probably not his fault. He said on the broadcast that the players each team is they're going to start warming up for about 5 minutes and then they're going to take the field and resume the game. He said this before the ambulance left the field, okay? The game had not been suspended at that point. So that is still within the first 20 minutes after the play has happened. You got to think in the first 10 to 15 minutes, there's a lot of things that are just chaos that's going on. There's still chaos going on. This is probably the standard protocol. I don't know this for a fact, okay? But this is probably the standard protocol that when an injury like this happens, when there's a significant delay, you want to give teams time to, get reacclimated to the speed of the game, get them loosened back up, He was probably saying that because it's probably with a normal response to a situation. Now, there was a lot of people saying that the NFL was telling that to the players that they weren't going to suspend the game and that they were going to go back out there, and it was the players and the coaches acting in solidarity together that convinced the evil NFL and the evil Players Association that they weren't going to play. Okay, so let's go over here to Tom Pelissero. Now, you can choose to believe this or not, okay? This is whether you want to believe any of this. It's totally your deal. And I'm going to move my face over here so we can see these tweets. Okay. Okay, so Tom Pelissero, NFL EVP Troy Vincent, said there was never talk of a 5-minute warm-up period or any other time frame other than making sure both teams had proper time in the locker room. Quote, "It never crossed our mind to talk about warming up to resume play. That's ridiculous. That's insensitive." The NFL was listening to it through a ref's mic as he spoke with Sean McDermott and Zach Taylor about going back to the locker room and discussing what to do. It was fluid and things were changing by the minute. Emotions were extremely high. It was a very volatile situation. Now, when you look at the responses to this, which I'm not going to show here because that, quite frankly, they don't deserve a response. A lot of people are, responding with memes, responding with things like, "Yeah, sure, you're right. Yeah, you're lying. I don't believe you." Look, if that was happening and this is damage control, that's one thing, okay? I tend to believe, again, I have no reason to believe the NFL, the Players Association, because of what they've done in the past. In this situation, which is highly unprecedented, which has never really happened to this extent, where a game was suspended like this because of a player injury, which is, to my knowledge, has never happened. These guys are having to adjust on the fly, okay? They're having to make decisions in without any context of what to do. They're trying to make the best decision for that moment, and then they'll make the next decision that they need to, 5 minutes from now. Okay? Put yourselves in their shoes. In my opinion, they handled this very well. They suspended the game almost immediately when they understood the severity of it. The game was suspended almost 10 minutes before the ambulance left the field. Okay? The ambulance and Hamlin were still on the field when the game was suspended. It wasn't on the way to the hospital. It wasn't after he got to the hospital. There was considerations that they had to take care of. They had to make sure that the route was clear. They had to make sure that the fans weren't all like running out of the stadium or looky-loos, weren't trying to, take pictures, for whatever weird fetish reasons they have to post on Facebook and Instagram about, oh look, I was here, and the guy that almost died passed me in a stretcher. Look, there's people that are like that, and these people are disgusting. They have to consider things like this. Okay. Let's go over here to Mike Garofalo. NFL Executive VP of Football Operations Troy Vincent said on a conference call with the media, he says neither head coach nor any players spoke about resuming the game. It was really about Damar. Look, I've never seen anything like it, so immediately my player hat went on. I commend both of these coaches. It's a tough situation to go back in the locker room and look at 53 men trying to calm people down. It was obvious on the phone that emotions were extremely high. It was a very volatile situation. The coaches led their locker room. That's about all that he had to say. I think Ian Rappaport. Let's see what else. He says, as for the 5-minute warm-up that was discussed during the broadcast, NFL executive Troy Vincent says, I'm not sure where that came from. That's insensitive. Says the only focus was on the players and making sure they were okay. Now, look, this isn't the first time. If this is true, this isn't the first time Joe Buck has said something stupid and said something insensitive. We all remember, what? Never mind. I'm not going to go into that because there are things I could bring up here, but this is not the point. This is not the time for that. NFL executive Troy Vincent said on a call while he was in constant communication with those involved, neither coach was talking about resuming play. The players weren't. It was really about tomorrow. How do you resume play after you've seen such a traumatic event? So people want chaos. People long for stuff to happen and to just to validate their whatever preconceived notion that the corporations and the NFL is this big bad wolf in the corner, and look, I'm going to be very, very clear, very open here. The NFL doesn't handle things perfectly. I thought they handled this as well as they could have tonight. Now, what happens next? Well, the first thing that we all need to consider, though, is we still need to pray for Damar Hamlin and his family and for his recovery. Obviously, this is going to be a situation that is going to be very fluid. The news that came out a couple hours ago was that he was let's see if it was. It doesn't say. But I do remember it was basically his vital signs were stable. And he was back to although they didn't say stable, they said normal. His vitals were normal. He had been put to sleep, and he was intubated. After he was put to sleep, and that his vitals were normal and they were strong, but he was still in critical condition. So they said he had a strong pulse. His blood pressure was good. So these are good things. These are really, really good signs. And our hope and our prayers is that, that he can recover from this and can play football again next year. And because it obviously doesn't look like he's going to play anymore this year in the playoffs, which is a shame because he's worked so hard, with his team, with the Bills, one of the best teams in the NFL, to get to this situation. So, so one of the other things I wanted to address with this, let's see, we talked about the NFL, the whole Joe Buck thing about when he said the 5 minutes, and then the Players Association and the NFL, they denied that was ever said. So regardless if it was said or not, I mean, we have to move on. I think the NFL, like I said earlier, I think they handled this very well. I think they did as well a job as they could have. I think a lot of people are being overly critical of them. I think these people need to step back and they need to realize that the right decision was ultimately made. The right decision was made and reached to 23 minutes after the injury, after the play was over. 23 minutes. Okay? And I've never heard of a game being suspended 23 minutes that quickly. They did the right thing here. Now, we can second guess and do all the things. Look, I'm not going to second guess anybody tonight or tomorrow or ever on this. You know why? Because this is 100% unprecedented. And I think, and they got to the right decision. They postponed the game. Okay. Now, where do we go from here? Because there's been some people on social media that have been tried to ask this question, and they've been shouted down by all of the pearl clutchers online. Look, this injury to Damar Hamlin is tragic, and it's not good. That being said, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. The NFL season's going to continue. And people say, oh, it's the almighty dollar. Well, it is what it is. The NFL season is going to continue. Damar Hamlin's injury, him being in the hospital, is not going to stop the NFL from playing games. Should it? I don't think so. We had 1 week off after 9/11. We didn't play football games for 1 week, and we resumed the week after from 9/11 when 3,000 Americans died. We're not going to stop the NFL season either for this injury. It was the right decision to postpone the game. It absolutely was the right decision. But we have to move on from this, and it's time to start asking those questions. Obviously, the NFL they were saying nothing about what was happening. Was it Tom Pelissero? Yeah, the NFL did not offer any medical updates on Damar Hamlin's on tonight's media call, nor did it address questions about what will happen with the suspended game. Okay, so they're not going to answer questions about that tonight, which I respect their decision to do that. So, what does this mean? What does this mean now going forward? What do we do? What's the next step? It's a Monday night. There are games. Here, let's go ahead and... Here, let me get this back up here. Let me put my picture up here in this corner. Okay. Ooh, sorry. Had to pause there for a second. I was talking about earlier about how the popcorn kernels I'd eat. I had one get caught in my throat. Oh, and now I'm... Oh, that was... Ooh. Okay, so the schedule, as it shows here, so Saturday, on January 7th, this coming Saturday, there's obviously 2 games. My Kansas City Chiefs are playing at 3:30. And I have company coming over that night, so game should be getting over by the time my company comes over. New England at Buffalo at noon on Sunday. Excuse me. And then Baltimore at Cincinnati, it says TBD. I don't know if that's because if the TBD is because of tonight or if they hadn't announced a time for the game. I do know that they put the Detroit Green Bay game in the flex position. They flexed it to Sunday night because it's going to be a winner. It's a winner go home for both teams, is my understanding. And then this one here, the Tennessee Jacksonville game, is the same thing. It's also a winner go home. So both teams are playing Sunday. It's already Monday night. And then Sunday, January 8th. And then the 14th are the wild card playoffs. 14th, 15th, and 16th. That's in 2 weeks. I don't know when they're going to make this game up. It would be unfair to ask them to play it on January 7th. I mean, this was the problem with the Monday night game. When are they going to play this game? What makes the most sense? And this is where I really don't have a good plan or a good idea in my mind of when they can get this game resumed. I suppose they could play it tomorrow. Tomorrow, man, I just don't know. I mean, if they played it okay, so let's talk about this. If you play on a Sunday and then you turn around and play on Thursday night football, which, the Chiefs did that this year. Every team does it that plays on a Thursday, just about. So Thursday or Sunday you play, then you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, and then you play Thursday. So you have 3 days off. So let's say they play. So Cincinnati's playing on Sunday, and so is Buffalo, right? Yeah, they're both probably this Cincinnati typically, since they're on the East Coast. When I said the East Coast, they're in the Eastern time zone now. They're usually in the noon slot, for games. So so let's back up. Saturday, Friday, Thursday. You got to play tomorrow or Wednesday. That would give you the same window of opportunity from the teams normally have. The game's got to be played tomorrow or Wednesday. That's the bottom line. There's no other fair way to do it. Now you're like, don't talk about fair. There's a guy in the hospital clinging to life. Okay, like I said, we're praying for him, but we have to make decisions going forward, and decisions that are tough. I mean, there was one person that tweeted out, and I couldn't. It was so ridiculous of a tweet. They said it was actually in response to Nick Wright, who is an FS1 analyst as well. Nick obviously is a famous Chiefs fan, and he said something to the effect of the guy in response to him said something to the effect of, Nick, you should. You only care about the Chiefs, and the Chiefs honestly should just if they want to do the right thing, they should just forfeit the number 1 seed and just give it to Buffalo. And then whatever happens the rest of the season, then they can decide the seedings 2 and 3 beyond that. What do the Chiefs have to do with this situation? I mean, the bottom line is that the playoffs are going to occur. The Super Bowl is going to occur. And there needs to be teams seeded 1 through 7 in the AFC. And this game is going to be a critical game to determine those seedings. And I say critical game, it is probably the most important game of the final 2 weeks to determine those seedings. And Now, they can't just say, let's just count it as a tie. It's not fair to Buffalo. It's not fair to Cincinnati. They can't just say, "Oh, we'll take the result as where the game happened," and Cincinnati wins 7-3. Well, that's not fair to Buffalo. You know, they can't just say, "Well, let's just play." They only play 16 games, and we'll just take the winning percentage on that. Well, then Kansas City just needs to win next week or this coming Saturday, and then they're the 1 seed regardless because they'll have an extra game played. They'll have the same amount of losses, but they'll have one more win than Buffalo. This is a situation that needs to be resolved very quickly. And I'm going to go out and say that since the NFL is obviously not making any statements tonight, they're probably not going to play the game tomorrow. The game should be played Wednesday. It should be played Wednesday night. And in my opinion, Buffalo already plays at noon on Sunday. I don't know if you can move that, but since this one's TBD, I would flex the Green Bay game back to the 3 o'clock time zone or noon. I would flex Cincinnati to 7. I would try to even flex the Buffalo New England game, which is also has a lot of playoff implications. If you could flex both of them to Sunday Night Football, I would do that, honestly. Or play the game tomorrow and flex one of them to Saturday. That would still be 3 days off. Well, yeah, it would be 3 days off, and they wouldn't do that. I would try to flex both those of the Cincinnati and the Buffalo games to Sunday Night Football, and just play them at the same. I know they don't want to play them at the same time because of, I don't think NBC wants that, and quite frankly, they may not be able to do that, or maybe they can flex one of them to Monday night. I know there's no Monday night game scheduled for the final week of the season, but I think you can make an exception. That's the only way to do this. But the game has to be played tomorrow, or it has to be played Wednesday. I don't think it's going to be played tomorrow, Tuesday, January 3rd. I think it's going to be played January 4th. I think that makes probably the most sense. But anytime after that, you're running into a whole bunch of problems. Because the playoffs, they have to occur when they are scheduled. We can't just... unless they push everything back by a week. I suppose they could... The problem with that is that then every team gets a bye. And some teams get 2 weeks for a bye. Because of this situation. I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. That would be... this is unprecedented. So I think again, I'm going to land back on the whole thing of, I think what they should do is they should play Wednesday night on January 4th. Play at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern. And then both teams turn around, obviously, and play on Sunday as well. And I think it's going to be to the disadvantage of both teams because of the situation, but I don't think either of them really care at this point. I think they're only concerned about the health of I think they're only concerned about the health of of their brother. So it's a really, really, like what Troy Vincent said, it was a volatile situation on what to do here. And regardless of what the NFL does, there's going to be lots of people that are going to be upset anyway. So nothing is going to be perfect in anyone's eyes. But I think the thing that has the fewest amount of questions, the fewest amount of issues is this: they need to play the game either tomorrow, either on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, to make it as fair as possible. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Sorry for the extra long video here. A lot of it was just me rambling, but if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'm going to be coming back with some more NFL content as it pertains to the games, and we'll talk about the MVP race. We'll talk about the playoff picture in the NFC. I was going to do that tonight, but I'm going to, out of respect for Damar Hamlin and his family, I'm going to postpone that until later in the week. So, you guys have a great night, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Prayers to you, Mr. Hamlin. Get better.